two, one. Well, hello. Welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast, where we talk with writers from all mediums and genres about themselves, their work, and advice they have for writers. I'm your host, Paul Zeidman, and my guest today is fellow writer Brownell Landrum. We're going to be talking about her book, The Hero's Playbook. Not necessarily a prose kind of book, more of a workbook for writers, something to help writers be writers. Brownell, welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and I just admire your work. So I'm
Oh,
happy to
thanks so much.
happy to
I'm
chat
happy
again.
to have you here too. I can't wait to get started talking about this. But first, as those familiar with the show are familiar, we like to start things off talking about anything we may have read or watched lately, how we felt about it, liked it, hated it, indifferent, what have you. I'll go first just to give Brunel a little time to collect her thoughts. Since it's been a couple of weeks since I last recorded, so I've been very busy going to the movies. So there's a great local theater near me, and they show something almost every night that's not a mainstream movie. They have those, but they also have a second screen for, hey, here's something we want to show today. And so a week and a half ago, they showed Rebel Without a Cause, which I hadn't seen in years. Still very powerful, still very impactful. Was just loved it all around. And then also watched mainstream stuff. I watched Superman, loved it. Fantastic Four, loved it. There because they were honoring Brian Wilson at the same theater. They showed Love and Mercy. Great
Oh.
movie, very sad story all around, but still glad I saw it. And because my daughter is really into K-pop, on a whim, I decided to watch K-pop Demon Hunters, which is an animated film on Netflix. It's silly. It's very much in the K-pop vein, but I enjoyed it. I don't need to see it again, but I enjoyed it. Brownell, what about you? On the anything good or bad on the reading and or watching front?
Yeah, a bunch. I've gotten really kind of obsessed with Chuck Wendig books. I don't know if you ever read
Okay.
any of his books. And Wanderers and whatever the next one is, I'm on the second one. And I'm listening to audio, and I'm glad because the narrators are so good, right? Because I'm
Hmm.
pretty picky about who the narrators and how well they do. And I am so obsessed with his use of metaphors. Like
Hmm.
it's just the most brilliant, just so brilliant use of metaphors. And so that has been those, and they're like 28-hour long audiobooks. I mean,
Wow.
they are long. And I also I had read the books and I just listened to audiobooks again of Blake Crouch's books, Upgrade and Recursion. And I know they're both optioned. One is optioned by Shonda Rhimes and the other one's by Steven Spielberg, so not too bad. But I like the way he writes. If you read his books, you can see how easy it can be adapted. It's like you read it and go, okay, this can be go in any direction. It can be taken off into a TV series, and so from a writer ear or eye, I like to kind of pick that up. As far as watching, it's funny because I was telling you earlier that I'm living this nomadic life and going from hotel to hotel, and I normally will watch streaming or something that I can kind of choose what I'm watching, but when you're at a hotel, there's no on demand or any of that. And it's funny to watch the things that they repeat. Like I used to love the podcast, The Rewatchables. I don't know if you ever watched
I
that
think
or
I've
listened
heard
to
of
that
it.
show. Oh, it's just they just go through all these movies that like you want to watch over and over. Like you mentioned, like what you don't want to watch over. And Bill Simmons, if you know any of his podcasts, but he does get into they get into this whole thing about, what are the iconic moments in this and what makes it rewatchable, and they have a lot of fun. So I recommend that podcast. I don't think it's still on anymore, but so it's funny to watch some of the like Jaws, and then I obsessively watch YouTube videos about making movies. So
Okay.
anyway, that's where my and I also watch The Good Place front to back.
Oh,
And
wow.
I had not seen it when it first came on, which was kind of interesting because what I'm currently writing now is in a very similar, like that would be a comp for it. It's a very different story, but a similar kind of magical realism. And it's because I wrote my stories before I saw the show, so I can
Hmm.
actually officially say that I haven't. But I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a
I,
blast.
I I have seen The Good Place. I remember
Yeah.
watching that just before lockdown started, and then I think was
Yes.
able to wrap it up right after lockdown started. Just one quick question about Blake Crouch books. What kind of what genre would that fall under?
That's definitely would be science fiction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was not familiar with him. Chuck Wendig I had heard of, but Blake Crouch I had not.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, but well, he did. I never saw Wayward Pines, but and from what I've read, and there's some debate about this, that he might have actually written all the episodes of the series, TV
Hmm.
series himself. He wrote the book and the episodes. And Dark Matter just came out on Apple within the last year, but I haven't read it because I watched the series. I read the book.
Hmm.
But so yeah, really, really interesting. I sent a friend of mine to read one of his books, and it wasn't her jam,
Hmm.
but she really loved it. It's like, wow, thank you for telling me about this.
Oh, that's great. It's always nice when
Yeah.
someone likes something they weren't expecting to like.
Yes, exactly. And that, it's fun when my own books, when people do that, like, boy, I
Hmm.
wasn't really going to be into a reincarnation mystery love story, but you got me, you hooked me, it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
fun. Yeah.
Okay, so that's some great stuff there. So Brownell Landrum, let's talk a little bit about you, the writer. How
Yeah.
did you get your start? Were you one of those voracious readers as a child, and you just kind of like, oh, I'm compelled to write. I cannot go another day without jotting a couple of pages down, or was it something you were very averse to and came into it later in life? What is your story?
I decided on a career actually in marketing and advertising when I was a teenager. So that's kind of where I went, which I guess, has creativity and writing in it.
Hmm.
And so, and it, in a certain time period, it was after the Mad Men zone, but still, advertising was like the cool place to be, back then. So I really never thought I would write anything other than nonfiction when I wrote my first book. It's called Five Reasons Why Bad Things Happen. So I was like, okay, I can do nonfiction. I can think linear. I can organize thoughts. And then I tried fiction, and that was it. Like I was hooked.
There was no looking back.
There was no looking. I mean, I have written some, well, I've written the Hero's Playbook, so that's nonfiction, but I like writing the fiction for sure.
Okay, well that is a great segue. So we are here mostly to talk about your book, The Hero's Playbook for the Hero in All of Us. Before we talk about what the book itself is,
Yeah.
why don't you give us the I like to call it the elevator pitch or the 5 second pitch. Other people use that term as well. But how would you say you're at a cocktail party and said, "Hey, I'm working on this book called The Hero's Playbook," and said, "What's it about?"
Yeah, it's a playbook, so it's meant to be fun, and it's a way of using kind of inspired by Joseph Campbell and Christopher Vogler's Hero with a Thousand Faces, the hero's journey, and it takes you through a lots of fun activities and things, and it's for anybody if you want to be a hero. So it could be for leadership training, or it could be for writing, and if you're writing something new, you go, okay, wait a minute, I want to understand these elements of my story. It could be for if somebody wants to write a memoir. It kind of can fit any of those.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say it's interesting you mentioned Joseph Campbell because my first reaction while I was going through this that it lays out a lot of similar concepts to Hero of a Thousand Faces and other, for in my case, screenwriting guidelines. And I just kind of, I guess we could kind of preface this. It's really, for the most part, kind of like a workbook
Yeah,
that it's
well,
got
I
all
call
of
it
the
playbook because I want it to be fun. But
right.
yeah, if you see it, if you can look through it, just to kind of people get an idea if they're visually, see it's all kinds of different activities. And I also, one of my things in my history is I used to own a training company. So I knew how to create training information. And I thought, okay, let me take some of that background and my writing and put it in something that would be fun for people to go through.
Sure. So, what was the inspiration for wanting to do this? I mean, you said you're working in marketing, and then you pivoted to fiction. So, what was the motivation, the light bulb that said, "Hey, I want to help other writers, and how can I best do that?"
Yeah, I had heard about, I mean, being really transparent, I'd heard about the success of a woman who did a journal on TikTok, and she sold 1 million books, like, instantly. And I thought, okay, that would be interesting. What could I do? If I did something like that, what could I do? What would be my strength? And it's hers was a journal, and it fits into the low content category of Amazon, if you know what that is, which is generally a question at the top and fill in the blank. And she sold
Mhm.
1 million books. It just blows my mind. And so I thought, well, if I could do something like that, a friend of mine was doing one, hers is on psychology, but I thought if I did one, what would I do it on? And it's so funny because once I got it there and I applied and I submitted it to Amazon for publishing, I thought, well, okay, it would fit in the low content book. And they came back and like, no, It is not low content. I mean, they were really pretty funny about it. They're like, you're going to have to recategorize that. And then they put it in whatever
What
category.
what classifies low content?
I don't, well, obviously, if you looked at the book, you can see it's high content. There is
There's a
massive.
lot going on. I'll give you
Yeah.
that.
But low content really is those journals with a question at the top and a bunch of blank lines. I mean, there's not really anything to
So
it. It's
a
not
lot
really
more blank
teaching you.
space than exercises and
Totally, mostly all
okay.
blank space. Yeah,
Got
with
it. Got it.
prompts. Yeah.
What I think you kind of touched on this earlier that I thought was a really nice touch is that a lot of the exercises in the book that they can apply to both the writer and also to the characters that the writer
Yes.
is working on because you talk about, what is your protagonist backstory? What's your antagonist backstory? What's their internal need and their internal goal, their external goal. And as a screenwriter, I've seen those in so many, setting things up and creating your story. But you have it that you can use it for characters, but you also have a lot of questions that apply to the writer as well. Like, what's the motivation behind this character, which requires the writer to really think about it. Like, why did you come up with this character? Or is there someone in your life that was the basis? So, was it intentional to kind of split it down the middle, or were you more focusing more on the writing, creating aspect and realize, oh, I can ask questions to the writer themselves to kind of help them delve more into their personalities type of thing?
Yeah, I really thought, I mean, writers, we love to get outside of ourselves, right? And we love to just say, okay, we're going to project something onto a character, but we kind of keep our wall around ourselves. But when you realize, as you're writing a book, and this could be for a non-writer writing a memoir or a professional writer that might be, want to do some introspection, the more they can relate to the characters, the better, right? And so the whole goal there was, aren't they the hero as they're writing this book? I mean, doesn't that make them heroic to get it down on paper, to think it through, to put themselves in this, in this mode of who they are and, what's their Enneagram or what are their stakes if they don't finish what they're writing? And so I wanted to play with that a little bit, if that makes sense.
No, it totally does. I also thought it was really interesting that I don't know, you call them chapters or sections?
Well, I segmented it by the 12 steps of Vogler, right?
Okay,
So,
sure.
you start with Call to Adventure, I mean, Ordinary World, and you go through Call to Adventure
Right,
and
right.
Refusal. And then I added one at the end, the denouement, just because that could be the last, Return with the Elixir, but it also could be
Sure.
something after. So I just indulged myself in that extra step. But for the most part, and I did integrate supernatural aid as a step, even though that's not in Vogler specifically, it
Hmm.
is in Campbell. Just because if you read anything I write, a lot of what I write, especially the fiction, gets into the metaphysical and the supernatural from a metaphysical kind of standpoint. So, that's my jam. So I thought I'd
Okay.
you know,
No, I
like,
get
let's
that.
get into this. What is your motivation
Okay,
for?
so we'll say that we'll call it segment,
Yeah.
from my perspective, that they all go deeper than just surface level development. It's like it's a real attempt to flesh out both the characters and the story. And also, as we said, to a certain extent, for the writer, was that intentional, or did you realize that as you were creating these, we'll call them exercises for each segment, that you maybe had, okay, this is something I know I need to have, but maybe a little more research and or development. You realize, oh, I can also ask this question or create this kind of exercise.
Yeah, it all flowed in different directions, like different, like I might have I might have had an idea. For example, like I call it the motivation model. And I stole that from my previous copyright that I had for the training company I had. But it looks at it's just a simple four square grid and with two columns and two rows. And one of the columns is want, the other column is don't want. First row is have, the bottom row
Hmm.
is don't have. So you just very simply say, what do you have? What do you want that you have? Right? What do you want that you don't have? What do you don't want that have? And what do you don't want and don't have? And it's like, even like when people think don't want and don't have, why am I looking at that? Well, that's gold for a writer, right? Because
Hmm.
that's the things that a character might have to face, or the things that they never thought that they might have to face, right? So it's a great introspection thing for yourself, but it's also fun. So I was to answer your question, I was looking at that model, knowing I want that in there, right? Because I
Hmm.
think it's a really interesting model. Where do I put it? Like, does it go where at what point? And this could be debated by, we could get a room full of writers and they probably all have different answers.
Hmm.
But at what point does that fit into the story, right? Because yes, ordinary world, they have wants, but are they really real wants, right?
Hmm.
So is it only once they've been through the first ordeal that they really get an idea of their wants? Um, so it was careful placement and to try to fit a flow. But I'll be admit some of them could be moved, you know.
Okay. I was going to say it reminds me of the whole, here's what your character, your protagonist wants, and here's what they need, their internal and external goal. And sometimes that they get what they want and what they need, or they get what they want but not what they need, or what they need
Yes.
but what they don't want. So all those ways to interchange it. And so it
Yes.
sounds like you're able to address that for each scenario for a writer
Yeah.
as part of these exercises.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And also looking at stakes that way,
Hmm.
right? Because it starts getting into stakes. And I did a lot of research on the stakes and if you see in the book, I mean, there's pages and pages and pages on stakes because once I got into that, I realized there needs to be more discussion about stakes, elevating stakes. And one of the things that I had fun with is the villain stakes.
Hmm.
Because if your stakes aren't higher than the villain stakes, or the hero stakes are not as high as the villain stakes, then who's going to root for who? Right? If you're the audience, you might end up rooting for the villain because they have higher stakes than the hero. So it was fun playing with that.
I was going to say, and it's also fun that the you can also play with the goal of the protagonist, it's counter to the goal of the antagonist, and there's that creates conflict, which all writers know that's what you need to
That's
have a
what you
good
need.
story to keep moving things forward.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I wanted to ask, so I could definitely see, as we've been talking, how this the book, The Hero's Playbook, would be really beneficial for screenwriters and to a certain extent also for TV writers. But what about for novelists and authors? Because I mean, the foundation and the structure is there as well, but there's a lot more. It's just writing for prose, writing books is just different than and writing for film and television.
Yeah, well, as someone who writes both, I think it's equally valuable, honestly. Because I usually will write both the screenplay and the book.
Hmm.
That's just kind of and I realize so I know what you're talking about in terms of the difference. I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to read Blake Crouch, right? Because he does both. And it's like, how do you do both well? And that's not a very long list of people, right, that do
Hmm.
that. But if you write novels and you have the possibility of getting optioned, you have a much higher chance of getting it made if you have the screenplay, right? So you
Hmm.
got to stack your deck, however you want. But I do think that actually think all of those things still apply. You need to know the want haves. You need to know. Now, not every story is a hero's journey.
Right.
And when you're talking about, like you said, applying it to TV, the difference there is that you generally will have multiple protagonists, multiple heroes. You may have episodes or arcs for
Mm.
one person being more the hero. Um, but I still think, I mean, the exercises apply. And, I've had some people tell me, oh gosh, just these three exercises made the whole book worth it. Like, I don't have to go through all of it to say it was worth it because it helped get something that you might not get if you're just reading it, right? But if you're
Hmm.
taken through an activity um, to get you to think and hopefully have fun, you
Okay.
know.
Well, that raises a great point that I wanted to ask you. As you said, there are 12 segments throughout
Yeah,
for the book, sections, if you will.
yeah.
Have any of them yielded the most feedback and or responses? Because you just said, like some writers said, these three really helped, me solve the problem of putting this story together.
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's more that like there might have been a specific activity. I mean, it's new. I only came out with it a few months ago, and I haven't done
Okay.
much to really pitch it. I got some terrific reviews, but it's still early in that process. But it's more like, oh, this particular activity, or you really got me to think about Enneagrams, for example.
Hmm.
Or you got me to think about the wants or the risk versus reward in a particular situation and how to analyze that. So it's less, oh, wow, I loved your ordeal section or I loved your elixir section. It was more like these particular activities within that.
Okay, just and as a kind of a quick follow-up, have you
Yeah.
had any unexpected responses? Someone said, "Oh, I never even thought about this," and then when I applied my story, you used my story as a basis for this exercise, it unlocked all the doors.
I'm hoping for more of that. It's a little early for anybody to say, okay, I took it all the way through a conclusion to a story, because it hasn't been out that long. But I'm excited to get that kind of feedback. I love to hear from people that say, oh, wow, this did it. Now, for myself, I'm looking at it and, I'm writing, of course, we're always writing, right? And I'm writing something and I'm like, wow, so much of what I learned in that was I was writing the hero's playbook. Now I'm applying to this next part of what I'm writing. So
Okay, so even though you said the book's only been out a few months, what has been the overall response to it? I mean, I assume you've gotten some feedback from people.
yeah, just I think awe. I think is the best answer because they're like, wow, how did you come up with all of that? How did you put all of that in there?
Sure.
Um, so I think that's, I guess, the best word to use.
Okay, that's cool. Is there an ideal way to use the book? I mean, do you go segment by segment or just straight through, or you think, okay, I'm having trouble with I guess entering the new world type of thing for a story, like going into Act Two, for
Right.
as in a comparison, or is it more of a case by case basis? Depends on the writer that what works best for them, or is there a way you recommend it? Just read through it and see what clicks for you.
I think it does depend on who's using it and what they're using it for. I mean, like if, for example, let's say just on another kind of extreme, you're an executive coach and you're working with a leader and you want to teach that leader about heroism and you want to build an organization of heroes, let's just say. So in that regard, that executive coach is going to know which activities are
Hmm.
more likely to get the interest of their client. And some may work a week, or maybe month on one activity, right? They may
Hmm.
take that and stretch it to the max degree. I was talking to somebody the other day who's working on a memoir or just has an idea of a memoir. I'm like, you need to start from beginning to end, right? You don't know what about writing. You don't know necessarily about even heroism or conflict or any of those things. You can't miss one of those beats. You have to
Hmm.
write it this way, right? Um, and so in that regard, it would be like, yes, just take it from beginning. And then, seasoned writers like you and, anybody who's probably listening to this, they just might be like, okay, I'm stuck at this place. Like
Hmm.
I can't get, or like, okay, I'm not getting hooking people because my stakes aren't high enough. How do I elevate my stakes? That kind of thing. And so they may go back and forth and they may come back to me and go, you should have done it exactly this order and not that order. And I'm like, great. I mean, I'm not pretending to be the world's greatest writing teacher or the world's greatest writer. I do know how to put together pretty cool training stuff,
Okay, well,
and that's
uh,
my
okay, so
thing.
this is a big question. So that a lot of the things we've been talking about involved with your book, The Hero's Playbook, is
Yeah.
that a lot of the lessons and the exercises and the segments apply for writers. Now, you also talked about how using it to inspire people, maybe your staff or employees or what have you. How could that be used, or how could the book be used in that capacity in a non-creative environment?
Well, like even let's say you're coaching a sports team.
Okay.
Right? And heroes in sports kind of are one of those things in our common vernacular, right? A sports hero is like a term, and you're like, but what is a sports hero? And so, how do you do that? How do you build the teamwork? Because that's where you've got your allies and your enemies. How do you look at the stakes of your team versus somebody else's stakes of your opponents? How badly do you want it versus how badly do they want it? So, understanding some of those aspects and getting into some of the deeper, I have like the 8 categories, they call it the wheel of life categories of like when you start understanding, let's say you're coaching a sports team and you find out, well, there's one of the players who has a million things going on at home and they're distracted.
Mm.
So maybe the other players can go and support that person to help build the team, right? So you have to be able to break down barriers. You have to understand each other better, all of that kind of thing. So there are so many activities in there to build that unity within a team. So that's just a kind of, I could see it. Actually, a friend of mine is talking about using it in prisons.
Mm.
And he's like, but they're not heroes. I'm like, are you kidding me? They're the classic hero's journey. They are going through the worst kind of obstacle. If they can get through that, think of what they can accomplish, right? I mean, like that's the ultimate people we want to inspire to be heroes. So I don't know if those are some examples that I think would
No,
be.
those are solid examples, and like I say, the prison one really hits home because it's so unexpected.
It is, but when you think about it, like those, I mean, I don't know about you. I know there was that Oprah book I read. I can't remember. I don't remember what it was. Sun Does Rise or whatever that is, about a guy that was in prison wrongfully accused for 30 years, 28 years or
Hmm.
something. It's like that's the classic hero. Like if you could inspire them to go, how can you get through this and become a hero after this instead of, the villain or the victim, right?
Hmm.
And so yeah, I mean, don't we love those stories, right?
We
They're not
always
maybe
do.
not enough of them, but I
Sure,
think we do.
sure. I was curious. So once you finished the initial draft of the book, if you will, did you beta test it with other writers just to kind of like see how they would use it, or did you try it on yourself? I mean, what was the process for giving all of these exercises a test run?
Yeah, I had two meetings with two writing like really high level writing teachers, professorial, actually three, on a professorial level. Like these are like super high level people, and I was showing it to them, and they were just getting excited, and they just thought it was a lot of fun, and I mean, they might have been a little jealous too.
Hmm.
But because we all have what we're good at, right? And so they're probably great at teaching. They might not know training.
Hmm.
It's a different kind of jam. That was super encouraging when super high level intellectual type coaches and teachers. When I took them through it, and they're like, yes, 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 this is really great. So that was really helpful.
Okay, that's great stuff. And as we've been discussing that, so from my perspective, like newer writers could definitely benefit from using this. So what
Yes.
about more experienced writers, writers who've gone through a lot of these exercises or self-imposed regimens to put a story together? So what would the benefit be for them?
Assuming they haven't gotten to the level of also being a coach,
Mm.
right? Because if they're at a coach level, then I actually have a mentor's manual to help. How do you take other people through this, right? And it's got all kinds of extra bonus activities and everything else from that level. But if it's just to help them through, I mean, honestly, it would depend on how fluid they are. Some people can get down on a keyboard and write and they don't need any help. They don't need to
Hmm.
look at things. But if you're like me, I'm like, okay, I need something to motivate me. I'm going to go. I like YouTube videos. So, and I'm going to go and I'm going to watch this video on, fill in the blank.
Hmm.
And that's where I'm stuck. And I'm like, oh, now this helped open up that portal so I can finish this part. Um, one of my favorite, Mark Manson. Do you know Mark Manson? He
Mm-mm.
wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving a You Know What. And
Okay.
one of my favorite quotes from him is "Happiness is solving problems," and
Okay.
I think that's one of the reasons why writing is so great is we're constantly solving problems. We're
Hmm.
setting up scenarios and we have to solve the problem. How are we going to get through this? How are we going to get? So if it helps somebody solve a problem or go through something or help them think deeper, um, I would be interesting to see if, how high advanced people get to the point of like, wow, I learned something here that I didn't know. I don't know if it's going to be at that level. But hopefully it's at least at level is it got me to think about something that I hadn't thought about this way. If
Okay.
that makes
No,
sense.
no, that makes a whole lot of sense. So, okay, you touched on it briefly. So, what is next? You said the mentor's manual. So,
Yeah,
so how
mentors
how is
manual.
that different from the hero's playbook?
It's got lots of different extra activities, and it takes it to another level. It's also like, okay, here's this page, here's how to get the most from it. And if you're coaching prison, inmates,
Hmm.
or if you're working with writers, or if you're, let's say, you're teaching a drama class in high school, any of those kinds of things. It gives you tips, like you could be at a corporate training or an executive coach. So it'll say, here's this page, here's a way to process it, here's some tips on, and then here's all these extra resources. Like, so there's all kinds of bonus resources for the mentors.
Okay, is it something that if, say, you don't have an actual mentor working with you, can you still get the book and apply all of the exercises to yourself?
That would be fun to see somebody do that. It's certainly, if you feel like if you're really kind of beginner, or you're reading and going, okay, I'm still need to learn more about this,
Hmm.
then it could help you understand the Hero's Playbook. But I think it's pretty intuitive on its own, to be able to go through yourself.
Okay, so the book we have been talking about is The Hero's Playbook for the Hero in All of Us by Brownell Landrum. So where can people get a copy of this fine tool in their
Yes,
writing arsenal?
it's on Amazon. It is, just FYI, it's only available in print form because what am I going to do? I'm going to send you things to fill in the blank on a Kindle is not really going to work.
Right.
So but yeah, right now it's only available on Amazon in print form.
Okay, can they also get the book via your website?
Not right now.
Oh, okay.
I can do an Amazon link, but right now it's just go to
All
Brownell. You can Google Brownell Landrum. You can go to Amazon, look at up Brownell Landrum. And actually, to be honest, it surprised me when after I did it. You kind of put on blinders, I think, if you're like me when you write and you're like, I don't want to look at anything else like this. I want to just do my thing. And then when I put it up there, I was surprised there weren't other books called The Hero's Playbook. Like it shocked me like crazy. Like, well, that would be such a universal theme. So you can just go to Amazon and put Heroes Playbook,
Okay,
and
that's great. And we kind of touched on it briefly. So how can people find out more about you and all of your work and everything about you?
yeah. Well, my name is Brownell Landrum. And so that's Brownell Landrum for anybody who's not watching video. And I'm the only Brownell Landrum in the world. So it's pretty easy to Google me, and you can find me on Amazon. I do have a funny story is that somebody like a few weeks ago published a book using my name on Amazon. They
Wow.
were trying to ride the wave of my success by faking it and putting my name. And I had to go to Amazon, like, I'm the only one. Like, you can Google, there's only
What was the
one.
book? Was it a fiction or was it like this, like a helping writers type of
It
book?
was about graphs and using graphs. I mean, and it actually looked like something I probably would have liked, but I'm guessing it was probably AI generated. So they just went on AI, said, crank me out a book. I want to use her name and I want to get whatever pennies I could get. And I went to Amazon and they're like, well, did you trademark your name? And I thought, do you have to trademark your name? Um, Especially a name when you're the only one. But I may still do that, but the trademark office is kind of a mess right now. Um, and I was like, well, I bet you this person's doing this with other authors. They're going
Hmm.
finding authors that have. I had just done a promotion and got several thousand downloads of the first book in my We Meet Again trilogy. So they were riding that energy wave, I think, and just thought, well, whatever they can. But it was pointing to my author page.
Hmm.
So anyway, Brownell Landrum. I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook, and the Brownell Landrum author is my author page. And then I'm on TikTok and Instagram as well. And I have a YouTube channel. I also have a podcast that is more like storytelling. So for writers out there, if you have a story that's in the metaphysical realm, and you want to get an IMDb credit, and it's like within our word count, I think under 5,000 words or something, shoot me a message because we'd love to add you to our podcast.
Of course. Okay, so
Called Life is a Trip, I should say.
okay. Okay, so
Yeah,
it's Brownell. The website is brownelllandrum.com.
it
And
is.
I assume it's Brownell Landrum like on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Because you
Yeah.
and
No,
also
no
it
funny
also
names. I'm just me.
okay, and also on LinkedIn, which is I think is how we
Yes, that's how
connected
we
as
met.
well.
Yeah.
Okay, excuse me. Well, the book again is The Hero's Playbook, and we've been talking with Brownell Landrum. Uh, This has been really helpful stuff. And I can say that having looked through the book and looked at all the exercises, and there are a lot of them, that they will definitely help you in putting your current project and future projects together. And even if you want to do a touch-up work on your previous stuff, you could probably go through and apply some of the exercises to it. You might be pleasantly surprised, like, oh, I never thought of that. And then you go back and make the appropriate changes. Brendel,
Thank you,
thank you
Paul.
so
That's an
much for
honor for
being
me.
here
So,
today.
yeah. Oh, it's been a blast. I've just really enjoyed it. So thank
Oh,
you.
great, great. Thank you. And viewers and listeners, if you enjoyed today's show, please hit like, feel free to leave a comment and subscribe. Talking about my social media, still doing my screenwriting blog, MaximumZ.blog. I'm still on Twitter at Maximum_Z, and it's at Pez Screenwriting for Blue Sky and Instagram. And this show is at Podcast CWL on Twitter and also on Blue Sky. And I got some books too on Amazon, the Go Ahead and Ask series about screenwriting and pie. Like I said, that's Brownell. I'm Paul. This has been the Creative Writing Life podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, go write something.